Welcome to the FI Investors Podcast, helping you achieve financial independence through real estate investing, one episode at a time. We talk about personal finance, mindset, and real estate investing. Whether you're a rookie or looking to scale your portfolio, we're here to provide you with the tactics and actionable steps to achieve your goals. Here are your hosts, Diego Corzo and Ward Mahoney.
Hello and welcome to another FI Investors Podcast. My name is Diego, your host, and today we have an amazing guest. We have Mindy Templeton from Kansas City. Mindy has around 21 doors as a real estate investor. She is also a wholesaler, a flipper, has done seller finance deals, and is also a realtor with a team of 15 agents. Today she shares a bit about her journey, what got her to quit corporate America. She shares, we go into a deep dive on her first couple of deals, how she was able to get into a couple of deals with no money down. We talk about her using hard money loans to grow her portfolio, to do the BRRRRs. And we just have an amazing conversation too about being purposeful as you're creating your wealth and doing the things that you want to do, and the power of having a strong and mighty portfolio. So I'm really excited for this conversation. I know that you guys are going to learn a lot. But before we get to the podcast, please do me a favor and leave a review or a 5 stars on the podcast. If you found this valuable, share it with a friend. And also, if you are looking to learn more about the FI Investors community, what we can do to help you achieve financial independence, please go to thefiinvestors.com. You can download a couple of courses there, the 6 keys to financial independence, also a couple of the calculators that we use in the community to analyze deals, to create and maximize cash flow. So analyzing deals, not just as a long-term rental, but as a short-term, midterm rental, and also co-living. So you guys can go to thefiinvestors.com to download that. And if you have any questions about the podcast, reach out to me on Instagram at Real Diego Corzo, and we can see how we can help and schedule a strategy call. All right, so without further ado, let's learn from Mindy. Hello to another FI Investors Podcast. Today we have Mindy on the call. Mindy, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic and still celebrating a Chiefs and a Royals win last night here in Kansas City.
Yes. Big night, I bet. And you were telling me that, of course, the Chiefs are still undefeated, which is awesome.
Yes. I got the pleasure of going to the game on Monday night. So,
okay.
Fun experience.
Yes, well, thank you very much for doing this early in the morning, of course. Really appreciate that, and especially talking real estate. So
yes.
That's good. So Mindy, I know you have an incredible story. We got to connect a few years ago through the mastermind and just through social media and everything. And you actually invited me to speak at one of your meetups, I believe in 2 years ago. So we'll talk a little bit about everything that you're doing over there. But first, for the audience here to get to know you a little bit, tell us what does your empire look like right now, and then we'll work backwards.
Of course. So currently, as far as my real estate portfolio goes, I have a total of 21 properties and mainly single family. I have 1 duplex mixed in there. And I do a little bit of a mixture of furnished rentals, owner to owner financing, and long-term rentals. So kind of all over the place. Collectively, I think the last time I checked, my portfolio was valued a little over $4 million. And monthly cash flow, I always tell people it fluctuates because I have furnished rentals. So it can be anywhere, in the height of furnished rental season, around 10,000 in cash flow. And then in the slower months, it can go down to around 7,500 to 8,000 a month of cash flow.
That is amazing. Amazing. So you definitely with 21 doors, 4 million in property value and living the dream on 8 to 10K a month in passive income. So that's
Yes.
awesome. That's awesome. And you mentioned something about the direct to seller too. So we'll talk a bit about that for sure. How, if we were to walk backwards, like if you take us back to the beginning, how long ago did you start real estate investing? What was that journey into that piqued your interest back in the day? Because now making 10,000 a month, it's definitely something that a lot of people like when we talk to people, that is like their goal, right? Like, hey, if I
Yes.
can make 10,000 a month, that will be amazing. And you're there. So yeah, walk us backwards so that we can chat a little bit about the beginnings of your empire.
Sure. So I actually, went to college. I got a 4-year degree. I went the traditional corporate job route and I got into the insurance industry. And I spent about 15 years in corporate, climbing the corporate ladder. I got to a director level position, thought everything was amazing and realized that, climbing up to the top, it really sucked. It wasn't everything I dreamed of. And I was traveling a lot, missing kids' events. I do have 2 kids, and my values just kind of changed. I was like, this isn't what I want for myself anymore. And I always kind of felt like I never fit inside of the corporate box
Hmm.
because I was constantly trying to switch to the next position, switch to the next company. I always wanted more, more, more. And then I really I went through a journey with one of my good friends at work in my corporate life. She was in her early 30s going through a cancer battle, and I watched her through her end of life, and that really had an impact on me. And
Wow.
that's when I just kind of, like I said, my values really changed, and I just wanted to have more freedom of my time and control over how much I make and how I make it and when I make it. And so I started researching about, ways to invest. At the time, I was already investing in my 401k. I had a Roth IRA. I set up college funds for my kids. I had an HSA also. So I was already interested in investing. But the thing I didn't like about traditional stuff is you have to wait until you're in your late 50s, early 60s to really see the benefits of that. And I was like, no, I'm impatient. I want
Hmm.
something now. And so when I was 35 years old, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, as everyone did. I started listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast. Um, and I remember I had a little sticky note and I wrote on that sticky note, I will buy my first investment property by March 26th of the following year, which was my 36th birthday. And that was in around January. So I spent January, February really just cramming myself full of knowledge, going to networking events. And then I dove in and bought my first property and I closed on it on my birthday. And I bring up that sticky note because I think that that's so important. Like I had that on my fridge, I saw it every day. And so my actions were aligned with that big goal I had set for myself of my first property. And then I didn't die from that first property. It was scary. I was nervous, all the feelings involved, excitement. I survived it. So I was like, okay, wasn't too bad. And then I went to buy 3 more that first year.
Wow.
And then I've been averaging about 5 properties a year. And I've used the BRRRR strategy for the majority of them and a little bit of creative financing as well.
Hmm.
So a lot of that was built without my own money because I didn't have it. So
Yes,
I had to get
yes.
creative.
Of
Um,
course. But
but yeah,
what's really cool about this is your journey in being able to, like, from reading that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, because it's one of those things, that book, when I read it, I was 21 years old, 20 or 21. My buddy Pascal threw me the book and he's like, dude, you have to read this. So I read it, and that book teaches two things, right? That you can trade your time for money or you can make your money work for you. And in it, that book, for me, I knew that in the future I was going to build wealth in real estate. I didn't know how yet, like I didn't know when I was going to
yeah,
start it. All I know that that was going to be my path. And then I set a
Mm-hmm.
goal to have 10 properties by age 35, right? I was
Yes.
able to achieve that much sooner, but it's really cool. I share this story because after reading that book, I set a goal. After reading that book, you set a goal,
Yes.
and you actually did it. But what I liked about what you said is that you wrote it down and then you put
Mm-hmm.
it in your fridge and you align yourself with that. That is something that a lot of people, I always feel like when people just say or they don't write it down or they're not intentional, it's just a wish, right? Or I wish I could do that. It was like, well, anybody can wish something. The main thing is putting it to paper and setting up a game plan to actually do it. So that's really cool. And you also said that you align yourself with that. So in the beginning, like you said, you ended up meeting different people that were in real estate,
Mm-hmm.
reading the books, getting the education and everything. How did you find that? You mentioned that you did the burst strategies on a couple of on your first few deals. But how did you end up finding that first one? Because a lot of people will go, okay, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. That is my goal is to start investing in real estate. But what do I do in between to make sure that I do it the
Yes.
right way?
So my first two, I actually bought turnkey off the market, and that was 5 years ago. And the way I leveraged other people's money for that is I had a family member who had equity in their personal home. And so I utilized that line of credit for my down payment. And I always tell people I've never put 20% down for a property. I haven't done it. And it's kind of like a goal now to never have to put 20% down. But I did a 15% conventional loan on those first two.
Nice.
And that HELOC is great, but you also have to pay it back. And so I tell people with those first two, I did what I call a delayed BRRR, where at the time I tied up the capital, but then 2 years later, I was able to refinance and pay that off. And so it was just not the quick BRRR that you hear people talking about. Now, the third property, we'll go into that because that's a great example of the BRRR
Yes.
strategy. I learned so much on that third property because it was my first one that I bought off market with a wholesaler. I didn't even know what a wholesaler was at the time. Um, I found it on a Facebook investor group here in Kansas City, and I saw someone posting about it, and I was like, that looks like a really good deal. I remember he was wanting 36,000 for the property, which is really pretty cheap here in Kansas City for the area it was in, and it needed about the same in work. And I saw all of these people commenting, that they were interested and they were cash buyers. And I also was like, I don't have cash, but I said, I'm a cash buyer. Send me the details. I was like, I'll figure it out later. Um,
I
so he
love
sent me the
that.
lockbox code. I went and looked at this house. And I remember I was so scared. I met him at this Mexican restaurant to sign paperwork to buy this house. I had to get him a cashier's check, which I had never even done that before at that point. Um, so I did all of these scary things, met this stranger at a Mexican restaurant who was a wholesaler, signed the paperwork, and I had 2 weeks to come up with the cash. And so I started messaging all those people that said that they were cash buyers on that group. And I was like, hey, how are you guys cash buyers? And a couple of them were like, talk to this guy, talk to that guy. That's how I learned about hard money. um,
Mm.
and so I used hard money for that. So I did off market, hard money. I had to do a rehab, which I had also never done that at that time. So I had to interview contractors and get that lined up. So everything was going smoothly for the most part, besides a few break-ins and
Oh
unexpected
man.
things along the way. Um,
Hmm.
and squatters, like I learned, like I said, a lot on that third property. And then so I had already done the buy, the rehab, and I was getting ready for the refinance, placing a tenant. I found a property manager for all of that. And then COVID hits.
Wow.
Literally the
Okay.
day that my appraiser was coming out to do my refinance so that I could pay off this hard money lender. And yeah, so it was wild doing all of that and then having a pandemic hit at the same exact time. And
Yeah.
I've heard people say the third property is the one that either like makes you or breaks you. And
Hmm.
like I said, I made it through all of those things. And then I even got my appraisal came back a little bit lower than expected. So I learned a lot about, I overestimated the value. And I'm glad that happened because that's one of the things that perked my interest in getting my own real estate license, which that
Mm,
set me on a whole other journey that I wasn't expecting during all of this. But yeah, that property, I saw that I was able to do everything, and some of the skill sets that I had acquired in my days of corporate, because I did a lot of negotiating, contracts, sales. That's pretty much all I did in my insurance career. And that's all transferable to what I do in real estate. So I learned quickly how to negotiate with wholesalers, get properties under contract, figure out, who I'm going to use as far as contractors. I learned you can negotiate, everything's negotiable, basically.
mm-hmm.
Um, and those skills have served me well. And each time I go through a house, I get a little bit better at each of them.
Of course.
So it's just getting those reps in, I guess. But yeah, that third property was the first full BRRRR I did. And then at one point I was doing 5 at one time. I don't recommend that.
Wow. Yeah, no, I can imagine because that is you become more like a project manager of
Yes.
just seeing where different rehabs are going, different tenants, putting them on the market for rent or all of that stuff. But it's really cool that you mentioned that. So that third property, you learned a lot. And it sounds
Hmm.
like between the pandemic, then the property appraising a little bit less than you expected, right? And
Hmm.
maybe spending a little bit more on different stuff. Um, and then getting so dealing with that plus also the squatters is just a lot of different things that you may have dealt with that you're like, okay, this is a lot. This is a lot to deal with, right? Maybe I should
Yeah.
not have done this. What would you tell those people that are thinking like they're dealing with all of these different issues that maybe they weren't expecting? And they're like, okay, no, after this deal, like I'm done. I should have, I'm feeling discouraged. What would you tell to those people if somebody's facing that right now?
So I think mental health is really important. That's a lot of, my page. I talk about investing in your wealth, and it's a pun on investing in yourself. And I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have made it through any of that stuff if I didn't take care of myself mentally and physically. That's what helped me get through it all. And, anytime I have a challenge, like, it's reality, it's real life. Things can get hard. So I do allow
Mm-hmm.
myself time to process those emotions, get mad, get sad, get upset, whatever that looks like. But then I'm like, all right, now it's time to solve this. You got
Mm-hmm.
yourself in this. Let's get out of it. And what did we learn from it and move on? I only allow a little bit of time for, the sulking and feeling sorry for myself. And then I'm like, all right, you've done this before. It hasn't killed you before. It's probably not going to kill you this time either. So let's
Yes.
keep going. Keep it going. Like, this is also important where a lot of people, when you talk with people, they're like, "Oh, my goal is 10,000 in cash flow. My goal is to have my own time back." And it's like, those are too surface level. Like, you got to get deeper than that. And when you really know in your heart and in your soul, like, I have a purpose on this planet, I have a why, nothing can stop you. Like, you have to
Mm-hmm.
really get in there deep. And a lot of that, like I said, takes taking care of yourself mentally and physically, because real estate stuff is hard. It's not easy. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to fool people into thinking that. Like, I went through a lot during all of these things personally,
Mm-hmm.
and they drove me, because I'm like, this is one thing in my life that I'm doing. I can control it, and it literally can change my future. It can change my kids' future. Um, one of my big whys is I like to show other women, especially because it is a male dominated field. And the majority of the women I attract into my life are because they see it in me and they're like, I want to do this too. And so I like to be an inspiration to other women who are in a spot like I was in my life. They're like, I want things to be different. So
Mm-hmm.
all of that keeps me going anytime anything goes off the rails, and it always goes off the rails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I feel like having that strong why is a thing that pulls you, right? When I had a friend who always say when the why is strong enough, the how will get legs. Like you will
Yes.
figure out a way to make it happen. And having that mindset of resilience, of that, okay, this is my situation, but I'm not gonna let myself become a victim. How can I be empowered in this situation? I feel like that's the thing that helps people move forward rather than trying to escape the situation. So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
good. Now you mentioned then with all of this, you had like five burrs at one point, like planning and everything. But you also mentioned that you went direct to seller. Let's talk a
Yes.
little bit about that. Like, what did you do to find these properties off market? What was the strategy? And then what were the conversations that got the seller to say, you know what, I'll sell to you?
Yeah. So that property I just mentioned, that was the first time I had worked with a wholesaler, and I actually saw at closing what he was making for his assignment fee. And that also
Mm,
motivated me. I was like, he just made $12,000 off of this. Like I can do that too. And so I got to a point where someone had sent me a referral and I accidentally became a wholesaler. And this property, someone in my sphere of influence sent it to me, and because they knew I was buying rentals, and I looked up all the numbers and everything, and I was like, this property makes sense, but it's in an area that I don't know well, and I don't buy there, and I haven't bought there yet. And so I reached out to another investor and I said, hey, here's the address, here's the Dropbox link for photos. How much would you pay for this property? And I had already gotten it under contract for 60 grand. And I was like, I'm going to figure out what to do with this property. And he told me he would pay 75. And so I was like, done. And I literally was honest with him. I was like, I don't know how to assign a contract. I've never done it. He was like, my team will help out. And so his team took care of everything. So I literally spent an hour of my time walking this house, getting photos, and then I went and let him back in one more time, and I made $15,000. And I was like,
wow.
yeah. But I learned during that, especially as the market was changing a little bit, prices of homes were starting to go up, like that assignment fee started to become pretty important in your numbers as an investor. And so I was
Hmm.
like, I want to start going direct to seller myself. And no offense to wholesalers, but there's a lot of them out there that shouldn't be doing this. Like
Hmm.
they don't know how to run the numbers. They're ending up hurting themselves and the sellers. And I was confident in my abilities at that point to run numbers correctly, help these sellers that were in distressed situations, and really you're solving a problem for them. And
Hmm.
so I just kind of did it by myself for a little bit. I hired a VA, and I was doing, a couple a month by myself. And then I got to the point where I recognize my strengths, but I also recognize my weaknesses, and systems and processes are not my strength.
Hmm.
I'm a sales girl through and through. And so I partnered up with a few guys that had military and engineer background, and we, scaled a successful wholesaling company here in Kansas City. And it's because we all meshed well and complemented each other's strengths and weaknesses. And I was the closer for our company, and I did all the renegotiating anytime we went and looked at a property and it was worse than we thought it was. Um, and then I did a lot of marketing to get our company out there as well because I have a social media presence. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, that was going great for 2 years. And then it just got to the point where my kids are very active, and wholesaling is active income and it takes a lot of work.
Yes,
And
correct.
and we were doing wholesaling and flipping. So, on average, we were doing probably 4 to 6 assignments a month and then at least a flip or two a month. And so it just got to be too much for me in the season of life I'm in right now. And so I was just like, okay, I'm going to kind of back away from this. It's not for me anymore. And I also had my real estate team going at the time. So I was just spreading myself too thin.
Yeah,
That's the thing I think a lot of entrepreneurs go through, or at least the ones I know. It's
for
like
sure.
once you figure something out, then you're like, what's next? Let's start another business. Let's do this. Let's do that. And the next thing you know, you're like, oh, now I got to manage all of this that I've started.
Exactly.
So I
Exactly.
found myself in those shoes and I was like, okay, I want to live too. Like I want to
Mhm.
enjoy the benefits of all the hard work I've put in over the past few decades and kind of start pulling back and traveling more and spending more time with my kids. And so, yeah, that was a great decision. I stopped that back midsummer and I'm very thankful that I did because now I'll have pretty much undivided attention to my agent team and they are killing it. Um, so I still get to, be in the real estate industry. It just looks a little bit different now, where our main focus is we work with out of state investors finding properties in Kansas City, because maybe numbers don't work in their market, for example.
Mhm.
But all that being said, I do still occasionally do direct to seller, just again, organic leads now versus the whole system and, 10,000 in marketing each month and all that overhead that we
Yes.
had. And then I do still have a lot of wholesaler relationships that I've built. And I like to mentor a lot of the newer ones in the market too and give them feedback as to like, hey, you sent this property. Here's a few things I noticed about it. Send me the next one before you have it locked up and I can help you run comps. Like, so I feel like I'm more of a mentor type role now.
Yeah.
And with those wholesalers, then, they want to bring me deals because I've brought value to them also.
Exactly. Exactly. No, it's really cool to see like the trajectory of the investor then into wholesaling. And you're right. A lot of people think that being that they want to invest in real estate, but then they look at becoming a realtor, a wholesaler, or a flipper. And I always tell them that is not investing, that is an
Mm-mm.
active income. And that's one of the great parts about real estate is that you can make income in various methods, right? You can do
Yes.
it the active way, you can do it the investing for passive income way. You just have to pick the ones. And what I always say is building that money machine actively. It's always good so that you can put that money to work into passive income assets, right? So
Yes.
all of this to show that, because I know that when you were wholesaling a lot and building that too, you did it through the cold callers with REI call center. You
Yes.
were spending money on marketing,
Hmm.
all of that. And sometimes it's like managing people, managing the systems. It can be a lot. But
Yes.
the one thing that I really liked about what you said is, and this is something that the reason why I'm mentioning is because my brother is in the same situation now too. Because my brother Gonzalo in Jacksonville, he was wholesaling a couple of years ago, like
Yeah.
350
Big
deals a year.
time.
Yeah. So, but he became known as the guy that was doing deals with other wholesalers. So
Hmm.
even now, similar to you, he's out there wholesaling properties, but it's because the wholesalers are coming to him. He's like, hey, I know that you between you and your buyers, you can sell this. I need help. And
Yeah.
is my brother just more providing value to them? And it sounds like you're still providing that value to the wholesalers in your market, which at the end of the day creates a win-win. And you might be the first one that gets to see those deals too. You're like, hey,
Yes.
I'll help you, but I have a buyer that would totally buy this. Don't share this with other people. I'll just give you the money that you're looking for, right? Because the numbers work. So that it's really cool to see the unfair advantage that you've been able to create for yourself as you're helping others.
Yes. And I always tell people like I did things backwards because most people start out wholesaling or becoming an agent. I started as an investor. And so I had an unfair advantage as a wholesaler and as an agent because I understood it because I'm out here on these streets actively doing it.
Mhm.
And so my brokers actually told me that when I first got started, kind of like what you said at the beginning, everyone wants that 10,000. They're like, all of the agents want to be where you already are. And I was like, oh, I hadn't even considered that before. And then I was like, that is powerful, for everyone within the market, real estate professionals, but also my clients too.
Mhm.
So it's a lot of fun to be like, I'm not greedy. I've always wanted to have a small but mighty empire. I've never wanted to be one of those, you know, big moguls out there that has hundreds of thousands of doors. Like, I'm happy with my, 25 to 30 doors for life is probably the area I'll stay at. And I'll work on paying down the debt a little bit more than I already have. But, just being able to keep it small and mighty so that now I can refocus on helping other people start their small and mighty portfolio. And if they want to explode it, I'll help them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it also keeps me grounded for a lot of people, because that was one thing that got hard for me with like bigger pockets. I stopped listening because I would listen to people. I'm like, I can't relate to these people. They're like flying private jets and all of these things. And I'm like, I'm not there. I want people that I can relate to. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what people can see in me, because I'm not a newbie, but I'm not 3,000
Mm-hmm.
doors and private jet status. So I like
Mm-hmm.
the little sweet spot I'm in right now. I'm happy. I'm financially comfortable, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to help other people get there too. So,
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about your realtor business now. We were talking about you have a real estate team. How did you transition between being just a wholesaler from that perspective to now getting your license, but now having your team?
yeah, so I mentioned I became an accidental wholesaler. I also became an accidental agent because I originally got my license. If you remember back to that third property with my
Mm-hmm.
value being low, I was like, I need to figure this out. And I was also having troubles like getting agents to open doors for me to look at properties. And so I really got it for myself. Like, I had
Mm-hmm.
no intentions of using my license actively with other people. And literally, as soon as I posted on Instagram that, I passed my real estate license, I just started getting DMs left and right of, hey, I want to work with you. Hey, I want to work with you. Hey, I want to work with you. And I was like, I wasn't expecting all of this. And it was really at the same exact time as I started wholesaling. So I was doing both hand in hand. And like you mentioned, REI call center, I had so many leads from there that I was able to, maybe it didn't make sense as a wholesale deal, but I had a buyer in California and the numbers worked there for me to represent them as a buyer's agent. So I was
Mm-hmm.
able to just literally, when you have all of those different tools in your pocket of knowing I can buy this and fix it myself, I can rent it, I can flip it, I can find a cash buyer for it, I can list it on the market, I can bring a buyer for it on the market. Like, when you have all of those different tools, you really do become unstoppable, because there's something that can be done with this lead always.
Mm-hmm.
And not everyone thinks that way. So anyways, I started helping people out. Obviously, I'm not going to turn away helping people that are reaching out to me. And I always tell people, if you look back to like 2021, 2022, and in the agent world, if you can survive as a buyer's agent during that time, you can live through anything. And I did that.
Yes.
That was when, houses were going for 30, 40,000 over asking, waiving everything. And I was a strictly buyer's agent at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I somehow like had a very successful first year. And it got to the point where I was overwhelmed. I couldn't keep up with everyone, on top of the wholesaling and building my own portfolio. And so it started with one gal at my brokerage. I just was like, hey, you want to come help me out? I'll show you the ropes of how to work with investor clients. And her and I did our thing for, a good 6 months. And then I started having other agents approaching and saying, I want to join your team. And I'm like, well, I don't have a team. But it's
Mm-hmm.
just like before, like, if people want me to help them out, I'm not going to turn them away. And so it escalated pretty quickly from, I was only a solo agent for, I want to say 9 months. I don't even think it was a full year before I started my team. And that grew quickly from, the two of us that started out to now there's around 15 of us. And
Wow.
yeah, and here in Kansas City, there really aren't many investor focused teams, or
Mm-hmm.
anywhere for that matter. Um, And so, yeah, that's our primary focus. And, I get to mentor my girls and teach all of them the ropes because the retail world and investor world are two different ball games. And so, we do both of them, but we focus a little bit heavier on the investor side. And yeah,
Right.
I think it was last year we ended with 30 million, which is pretty impressive here in Kansas City,
Of course.
because we
That's
have
awesome.
lower price point homes. And then this year we've consistently been in the top three teams across the country within our brokerage. Um,
That
so
is
yeah,
awesome.
I'm really happy with how that all worked out. I always tell people, my brokers started out, they had a saying, get Mo, good enough to move on. And so that's like one of the things I always think about is I need to get good enough to move on. And once I am, well, I'm not just going to move on. Now I'm going to build a team and outsource things and so that I can focus on what I want and everyone can have success and get a piece of the pie.
Yes. Yes, and it looks like well, not it looks, you are continuing to give back and train others and be able to help other people um continue to help the families create a living, right? And help the investors find the good deals as well. So that's
Yeah.
that's incredible. That's incredible. And it's really cool the way that you've been able to create your team too and it happened organically, right?
Yes. I
I
always tell
know.
people I don't recruit, I attract.
Yes, exactly, exactly. That's something that has been really it's we have a lot in common too, because in 2020, in 2019, I was featured on the BP podcast, and that got, for example, Andres Bustamante, who we
Yes.
just had him as a guest a couple of weeks ago. He called me randomly wanting to learn more because he got his license, and we actually started creating a team, a realtor team, because of the fact that he wanted to join a team and he was going to join somebody else, and we're like, no, you can join our team. So I tell my business partner, I was like, hey, we're starting a team and Andres is going to be the first guy. So like officially we will start one. And then now we have around we're around also like 15, 17 agents, and it's been really cool to see their journey of growth, their journey of in the beginning feeling maybe a little discouraged because people see on social
Yes.
media and they're like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be easy. And then 2, 3 months later, and they're like, I haven't sold a home yet. And I'm like, well, you're doing the right things, or you're doing the habits. It's more important to take the action than just seeing the results, because as a realtor and as a wholesaler too, I feel like you have to do things long enough to get momentum. And then
Yes.
once you get the momentum, all of the hard work that you put in, you'll see like, oh my gosh, this person called me back and this person called me back. Or this person said yes, and 3 months before it was a no. And I feel like people think that it becomes so easy, and it's not as easy. It is simple. You just have to have enough conversations, and then putting in the work. So
Yes. And
yeah.
it's like a roller coaster ride. Like we have
Mhm.
seasonalities, there's so many different things that impact the real estate market and externally. And I just have to we don't even focus on that stuff. Like all
Mhm.
of that's going to be happening. There's always going to be some reason to either not buy or to buy real estate. There's always going to be something. But we focus a lot on mindset. Like um, I have I started doing this 369 journal, and all the girls on the team got one too, because it's really about manifestations and affirmations and just keeping yourself strong mentally, like you said, to go through
Mhm.
the downs of the roller coaster. And then when you have the highs, plan for the downs. Like
Mhm.
it's not going to change, We signed up for
Exactly.
this wild ride.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
yeah, it is a lot of fun to see them once it all just kind of like clicks.
Yeah.
And you watch them go through the struggle of, am I even supposed to be here? I went through that myself. I had a few months where I was like, what am I doing right now? And then, yeah, a lot of people give up at that point, but when they have good people in their corner like yourself or I to help mentor and guide them and keep them focused for what's coming next, then they can be successful.
Exactly, exactly. So then now, as we're ending 2024, what is coming next for Mindy going into 2025, your projects? I know right before this call you told me, well, right before we started, you told me about a flip. So you're
Yep.
flipping as well, but now you're gonna continue just focusing in your real estate. Yeah, what's next?
Yeah, so I mentioned the portfolio, so I do self-manage. So that's another active role I've given myself, and I actually enjoy it. One of the perks of real estate, you get to pick and choose what you enjoy and do those things and outsource the ones you don't. So I'm going to continue self-managing my portfolio. I'm a lot pickier now about what I'm adding to my portfolio. And so, I do plan to add a property here and there as the numbers make sense, but I'm not actively scaling like I was for the first 5 years. I'm over that part of the hustle and the
Mhm.
grind, and I'm ready to live and enjoy life. And so, so yeah, I'll do a little bit with the portfolio. Same with wholesaling, flipping, here or there. I'm not actively doing those things. If they're attracted to me and it makes sense, I'll figure it out. But the agent team is my primary focus, is helping to continue to see these girls be successful and help our clients. And then active mom duty. Like, my kids have a lot of activities right now, and I've been enjoying a lot of traveling. Like the past 2 years, I've traveled more than I did the whole rest of my life collected. Like I got to take some
Mhm.
epic trips, and I want to do more of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for people because, like I said, a lot of people want to just scale, 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 and that's not for everyone. I'm a small but mighty kind of gal. I'm happy with everything we have. I'm financially comfortable. I get my cup filled with my networking events. I do still host those monthly here in Kansas City, so I'm
Mm.
still active in the community. So I'll keep doing all of those things, but I'm at a point where like I'm good. I'm good. And
Yeah.
I don't want to take that away and stress myself out by adding more.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I would say 2025 is going to be a lot of just focusing more on the girls, how I can help them in the agent team, maybe adding a property here and there, and then living.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Because you also have people have to enjoy the fruits of their labor too. If it's just
Yes.
grind mode, grind mode, grind mode, I feel like there's seasons in life,
Yeah.
and it is okay for somebody to say, "Hey, this is the next season I'm going, and I'm gonna have to say no to certain things, some sacrifices." And then it
Yes.
comes, "Hey, I'm out of this season," and you have to learn how to say yes, how to say no, to different things. That's one of those that for me have also been. I've had to say no to either the different businesses that I was part of,
Yes.
different things that I want to say yes to. And I do want to mention one thing because I feel like the one of your superpowers too is like power of connection, and
Yes.
which you do have a meetup. So
Yes.
share a little bit about that because I remember that when you invited me to be a speaker at your meetup, uh, it there was a snowstorm.
Oh my gosh, this was the wildest meetup story ever.
Yes, yes. Tell the audience a little
Yeah.
bit about that, and I'll share a little bit of it from my end, from my perspective.
Yeah, so we had literally like the biggest snow and ice storm we've had in Kansas City in decades, and the entire city shut down. And they were rerouting planes. You got rerouted somewhere on your way
Mhm.
in. And the meetup was supposed to start at 6. And my venue called me at like 3 o'clock and said, "We're not open tonight." And I was like, "I have a meetup, I have people coming." And so I scrambled and connected with another investor because I just asked on social media, who can host our venue? We have like 100 people planning, and everyone's like, "Nobody's going to come. It's Snowmageddon." They were calling it Snowmageddon. And we found a venue literally 2 hours before the meetup started. that was one of the biggest turnouts I've ever had. We literally had 100 people come out. Like I had people coming up to me, they're like, we walked because the roads were so bad, our car couldn't even come.
Yes.
Um,
It
and yeah,
was
that
it was crazy because it was my first time going to Kansas City, and I flew out the first thing in the morning. So it was like I was at
Mhm.
the airport at like 4 something, and I don't know where we landed. I have no idea where we landed, but I wake up. I was sleeping. I wake up and it said welcome, and it was another city. And I was like, I took a direct flight to Kansas City, not anywhere else. And I think we stopped somewhere in Oklahoma. I don't remember.
Mhm.
But I wake up and I was like, I took the wrong plane. What is going on? And then somebody told me, no, we had to stop because of the snow. They're gonna wait a little bit until the storm passes. And I was like, I'm speaking in like 5 hours. Like, there's no way. Like, I need to figure all of this out. I'm speaking in the evening. And then you picked us up. And I remember you told me, oh my gosh, this is gonna be an adventure. And we were like, okay, well, let's do it. I'm always down for a crazy adventure. And I was surprised because I was like, man, we flew here, who knows how many, like, there's a snowstorm, how many people are going to show up, and then everybody showed up, and I was like, this is amazing. So we had a really good
Yes,
turnout, and it just goes to show the power of community, that people do want community, even
yes.
if there is crazy snow.
Even in a
uh,
snowstorm. I remember
yeah,
driving to the airport. My friend Ryan was kind enough because he had a truck because my car wouldn't have made it. My Audi, not going to happen. And so he was driving, and I'm literally like, are we even on a road right now? Because you couldn't even see the roads. That was so crazy.
exactly.
But yeah, like you said, like people do crave that. And um, I think a lot of it too is like a lot of meetups, I feel like sometimes they make it about them. And I've never
Hmm.
done that. The Go Giver is a book that I love and I always recommend people to read. And I live
Yes,
life off of that. It's like if you're giving to others, you will in turn get, and it's so much more valuable then because you've also gifted someone else with some value. But that's how the real estate networking meetups work for me is people know like if I need something, I'm gonna meet someone. And it's not just me, it's everyone that comes to those meetups. They're all so giving. I have people that have hundreds of doors and they don't need to be there, but they come and they share value and all of the speakers that pour back into the community. It's amazing. And so yeah, I get a lot of just random people reaching out, hey, I need this or that. I get about 10 of those a day, just random
yeah,
requests. And I love it. I love knowing that I'm able to help connect people, like you said,
yeah.
because that one missing piece might literally change their life. You never know.
Exactly, exactly. And it's really cool that you mentioned the book, The Go-Giver. That is one of my favorite books. It's the little red book, as I call it. And yeah, The Go-Giver, amazing book. And I usually recommend that book along with, so for anybody that is wanting to become a realtor, I always recommend The Go-Giver, Seven Levels of Communication.
Hmm.
I recommend How to Win Friends and Influence People and The
Yes.
Miracle Morning for Real Estate Agents. I
Yes.
feel
Those are
like if
all
you read
great.
those 4 books, and if you want to get the investor mindset, like read Rich Dad Poor Dad. That book should be, everybody should read that one.
Yeah.
But
It should be college or not college, high school, like required reading at this point.
exactly, exactly. Just because of how many lives that book has changed, even though it doesn't,
Hmm.
the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, even though it doesn't tell you how to do anything, like it doesn't tell you, hey, these are the next steps. It just mentally, it just opens up your mind to so many more
Yeah, it
things.
exposes you to a new way of thinking. For a lot of people, like I grew up poor and I
Hmm.
didn't know that people ran businesses like normal everyday people. I thought that was rich people did that, you know. I had no clue. I'd never had any exposure to that. And yeah,
Hmm.
that book just helps open your eyes like, oh, there's a whole world out there.
Yes, yes. So Mindy, for anybody that wants to in the future maybe go to a meetup over there in Kansas City, or learn a little bit more about the Kansas City market, just or learn more about you, ask you some questions, where can people reach out?
Yeah, so I'm very active on social media. Instagram is my preferred platform. My handle is Investing in Your Wealth. But I also have a group on Facebook, Investing in Your Wealth. That's where I share all my meetups. That's for people to network and get referrals in between the meetups. And I've recently started playing around on TikTok. I don't know what's going on there, so eventually. But so yeah, follow me on any social media platforms on Investing in Your Wealth. Send me a DM. I personally answer all of those. Or you can always text or call. My phone number is 816-777-6549.
Oh man, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing your phone number. I
Yep.
that's one of those things that the people that that do reach out are the people that are gonna be like, hey, like I'm interested. How can I get involved in something? Because that's what happened to me. So
Yep.
yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for
Yes.
providing value, for sharing your story, inspirational. I learned things that I didn't know about you, so that is awesome. Later we'll definitely have to bring you for part two because I will love now to. I have so many more questions about the systems that you have from like
Yes.
leading your team to also we didn't even get into self-managing your portfolio.
Yes.
That's
Or
another.
seller
that-
financing or there's
yes,
so many. Yeah.
yes,
I could talk all day. Just tell me when you
yes.
want me back.
Perfect, perfect. So, Mindy, thank you so much for this opportunity. Look forward to staying in touch and for everybody to continue learning from you. Take care.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the FI Investors Podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And share this with a fellow real estate investor who you think would find value in what we do. Until next time.